Welcome to another Proline Academy session in our series for Strata Council members. You may recognize me. I'm Catherine Squires-Vasson. I'm the Director of Culture and Community here at Proline Management. We offer a number of different opportunities for learning for our Strata Council members and residents and owners in Strata communities. These sessions are opportunities for you to hear directly from service providers and professionals and learn more about specific items that impact your Strata corporations. If you have any questions or suggestions regarding these sessions, please feel free to reach out to me directly. We are always working on new things, and we're going to be adventuring into shorter informational pieces moving forward while keeping these sessions as well. But if you have any ideas of things that would be very helpful for your communities, for say new owners or things like that, feel free to send me suggestions. Also, please note that today's session is being recorded, and we will send a link out to everyone who is registered once that recording has been processed. There is going to be time for questions at the end of the presentation. So please note that your questions will be answered. Please use the Q&A function, not the chat, to type in your questions so that they can all be addressed at once. That's very helpful. If you put them in the chat, then they aren't answered in the same rhythm, and it can be challenging to go between chat and Q&A. One last thing, as this is a webinar, no one can see or hear you. So only the people who are presenting can be seen or heard. So you don't have to worry about accidentally turning on your microphone or your camera. If you do need to talk to me, you can send me a message directly in the chat. And now that covers everything I have to cover, and I'm going to hand it over to Christy Tambiri, Strata Property Manager and one of our managing brokers, to introduce today's session.
Thank you, Catherine. So today we are excited to have Matt Mulleray here with us to speak to topics surrounding warranties and renewals of buildings. Matt has a long-standing history of working with Proline and Proline Strata corporations over the years. He is the president of Metachro, sorry, Matt, which is a new name for his company, which has evolved from Method Engineering, if you're familiar with Matt. He is, like I said, he's had a long-standing relationship with Proline going back to 2008. He started with RDH Building Sciences and has worked with Stratas since then. In 2016, he started Method Engineering, and now here we are with. I'm not going to butcher it again, Matt. I'm not. I'll let you say it, and I'm going to let you take over and walk us through what you have to tell us about today.
Excellent. Thanks to both Catherine and Chrissy. Proline's been a really great supporter of myself and Method, now Metachro. Been very fortunate to work with them and the strata that they have. Certainly appreciate today. Nothing sounds like a riveting lunch like talking about strata, and then let's make it even better and let's talk about engineering stuff with strata. Let me get going here. So who am I? Yeah, so we're a local firm. We just are more primarily in the CRD since 2016, so we're going to be 10 here soon. We focus our efforts on building science consulting and then also construction and project management, primarily in the building science sort of field, so building exteriors, but we have been known to do other bits pieces on that side of things. We're a small group, and we really pride ourselves on tailoring our services to meet the needs of our clients. So strata consists of about 90-95% of our client type, so we know you well, and we also sort of know the rules of the game quite well, and do our best to make sure our services fit with what they need. So we really look at ourselves as problem solvers. Yes, we're an engineering firm. Yes, we do construction and management, but really we see ourselves as problem solvers, and that's I think one of the main things that differentiates ourselves. So I'm going to try and break up the session into topic that more related to any of the newer strata that are on here, and then also one that's maybe more geared towards some of the older strata buildings. So let's talk about new home warranty. So for anyone strata that are in newer buildings where the new home, they may still have a warranty. I'll just give you a quick rundown on some of the rules and maybe some of the things to think about. So it was in the mid-90s, the BC government initiated an inquiry. It was called the Barrett Commission. It was done by an ex-premier BC. And this was done in response to the leaky condo era. So if any of those that are old enough to remember that. And from that, the BC government created the Homeowner Protection Office. And the Homeowner Protection Act was enacted in 1998. And the regulations came after in 1999. And this homeowner warranty program was initiated as part of that, and that is a mandatory third-party warranty for all new homes in BC, including strata buildings. So third-party meaning it's a warranty that's been held by someone, not the builder. Okay, and part of that was builders becoming insolvent during the condo restoration era, and so the government mandated this third-party warranty. And with it came this really cool logo. 2510 is what they refer to, and that's because there's 3 parts to your new home warranty: 2-year clause, some 5-year clauses, and 10-year. And it's actually more complicated than that. The best part is it's coverage for labor and materials. So for those great warranties that are out there that will warrant only the materials, that's great. Your paint fails and they give you a gallon of paint and away you go. You got to go and do all the labor yourself. This warranty is not like that. It's a labor and material warranty. The legislation and the regulations note all kinds of specifics, such as minimum standards of the warranty, permitted exclusions. There's limits, and then things the strata need to do, or strata obligations as part of warranties. So the nuts and bolts. So I mentioned it's a 3-part warranty, 2, 5, and 10. Well, actually, the 2-year is actually a 3-part as well. Let's make it more complicated. So the 2-year warranty is actually broken into a 12-month warranty, a 15-month warranty, and a 24-month warranty. So 12-month warranty. This is for you as a strata owner. It's for your strata lot. So any defect in labor and materials, that's what L&M stands for, any building code defect. And, it's important to note that anything related to that is your responsibility as a strata lot owner. It's not the strata's responsibility to manage that warranty or to enact on it. So if you're unhappy with something within your suite within the 12 months of occupancy, it's up to you to follow up with your warranty provider. The 15-month warranty is for common property. So this is a strata warranty, okay? And it's for any defect in labor and materials and any building code defects. And you'll notice I've got the word defect in italics. That's because defect is defined within the Homeowner Protection Act and also within your strata's warranty policy. The 24-month warranty, which is our 2-year warranty, if you would, it's also for common property, so the strata, and it's a little more specific. So any defect labor materials related to the electrical, plumbing, and HVAC, any defect specifically around cladding, caulking, and windows, and any defect that renders the home unfit, and any building code defect. So when you hear we've got a 2-year warranty, know that there's actually 3 parts of that, and then there's actually specifics within each part of that warranty. 5-year, so this is your second part of the 2-5-10 warranty, and it's for defects in the building envelope. Again, that's in italics, that's a defined term, and it includes a defect which permits unintended water penetration. So a leak. If you have a leak in your building within the first 5 years, that's likely warrantable. There's this subtle clause that they have that says such that unintended water causes or is likely to cause material damage to a home. And it's these statements of likely to cause that creates a grayness to what's actually a warrantable item. 10-year warranty And your 10-year warranty is a structural warranty, and it's for structural defects that result in failure of a load-bearing part of the new home, or that causes damage that materially and adversely affects the new home, okay? And structural defect is also a defined term within the Homeowner Protection Act and the Strata's warranty policy. Here are two examples. I've blotted out any sort of identifiers, but these are two different warranty providers allowed within BC. And we've got WBI and Travelers, and you can see their policies are just the covers look generally the same. And these are for strata buildings. So you'll note on both of them, it'll say Strata Corporation, or it'll say for dwelling units and common property. You'll notice on here, it doesn't say anything about a 2-year or a 12-month warranty. And that's because that warranty policy would have been provided to the strata lot owner at the time of purchase. You can see it's got lists of expiration dates and commencement date of the warranty. Those are important to know because obviously your warranty coverage will be based on that commencement date. That commencement date should be the same as what's on your strata lot. That being said, obviously check your strata lot policy specifically. So which of these warranties is the most important? Well, the 15-month warranty provides the greatest coverage. So it has the least limitations. Now, the extent of the warranty coverage diminishes as each warranty piece expires. So the 15-month covers more than the 24-month, which covers more than the 5-year, which covers more than the 10-year. However, that being said, what we typically see are any repairs or warrantable repairs, if you would, they typically increase with each warranty term. So if somebody has a small 15-month warranty issue, that may be a relatively inexpensive fix. Whereas if you have a structural warranty issue, 10-year structural warranties can be quite costly to fix. And so, certainly they've each got their importance. Our general recommendation is if you as the strata are going to take on a warranty review or considering it, we do recommend the 15-month just because it gives you the most coverage and the greatest opportunity to get things corrected at no cost or low cost. So who can complete a warranty review? Well, anyone can complete a warranty review. There's no requirements within the warranty policy. And what we typically see, it's building envelope engineers, people like myself. And why? Well, this warranty policy came about because of the condo restoration and condo failures. Building envelope engineers were heavily involved in those, and it just became a logical transition for them to sort of be a main point of contact. That being said, because these warranty policies are comprehensive, mechanical and electrical professionals are recommended, certainly for specific warranty needs. I mentioned the 24-month warranty. It's got specific clauses in there about your HVAC and plumbing and electrical. The most important part, though, is to know who you're hiring and know what you're buying or what you're getting. And I'll give an example. I put in a proposal for a Proline building about 2 years ago. It was a large strata complex downtown, 2 high rises, and our quote was $10,000. It was around there. It was not cheap. We lost out to a company in Vancouver who was doing it for about half. Certainly on the front, that seems like a smart choice. When we did a bit digging and asked, how do we help our service get better, and why did we miss out? We found out that they were doing a general walk around with the building envelope engineer, whereas we had a mechanical consultant, electrical consultant, and we had hired somebody to do rope access work from the outside of the building to do rope drops staring down everything. So certainly knowing what you're buying and what you want is important, and it will also help you streamline your quote requests with consultants to try and get competitive bids, because obviously a $5,000 quote and a $10,000 quote, that's not an apples to apples piece. It happened to be on that point. So it's hard for Strata to know necessarily where their best value is. So how do you make a warranty claim? Well, it's listed in the warranty policy, and it has to be done by the Strata Corporation or its property manager. So, a contractor or a consultant can't make a warranty claim on behalf of a Strata, generally speaking. It does require written notice to the builder and the warranty provider both. And the policy will have specifics on what information they require to be provided within that claim. Usually it's locations and specifics of the issue. Photos may be required. We work with all aspects of warranties. So I've worked with warranty providers, worked with Strata, I've worked with builders, worked with warranty providers. The warranty providers all have similar requirements, but there are subtleties, and knowing what they are can help make your claim move along a bit faster. As part of that, it's important to note is if there is a potential warranty issue, sometimes these things, not sometimes, these things take time to sort out. They always do. During that time, the Strata does have a duty to mitigate. What that means is, let's say there's a potential leak. Strata makes a claim on that, and whether it's warrantable or not, the Strata has a duty to mitigate while that decision is being evaluated. So you can't just let that leak continue and potentially cause more damage, which then therefore increases the cost to repair. Now, what duty to mitigate actually means and how much you have to do, it's not defined, but certainly, important piece to note. So if a Strata has made a claim, now what? Where do you go from here? Well, typically you wait for a response from the warranty provider. Warranty providers, unfortunately, they're the holder of the policy, so they're also the judge and the jury, generally speaking. And they're the ones that decide whether an item is warrantable or not. If the claim or portions of a claim are approved, the Strata may want to continue to be involved. So what will happen typically is if a Strata files a claim and the warranty provider agrees with that and indicates they're going to come out and do some work, it may be important for the Strata to be involved. And there's a couple of reasons why, like how big or expensive is this repair, and how critical are the repairs to future performance? Because sometimes we see the repairs completed by the warranty may not be in the best interest of the Strata, in the sense that the repair is done to get through to the warranty period, but maybe not for the long-term durability, more in line with what was originally expected. So sometimes engaging an engineer or a project manager may be prudent for Strata to ensure their best interests are managed. We've certainly not advocating that it has to be, but certainly if things are expensive repairs and performance of those repairs is critical, then certainly prudent for the Strata to consider. So I'll show you a few examples of potential warranty items. This is a small Strata. Got to look at a canopy here, and you'll notice this canopy is partially attached by tension rods, and that photo there on the left, you can see it's starting to come loose, and you'll actually notice that canopy is tilting with the risk of potential detachment. Now, if this was made prior to the 15-month, that's a labor and material warranty for sure, easily covered. It potentially could also be covered under a 10-year warranty. 10-year warranty gets harder because it needs to be a load-bearing part of the building. That's not this. However, this could adversely affect the home. So again, that's the grayness of the warranty. And that's why the 15-month, which has a little more teeth to it, would be an easier sell to the warranty provider to make this a no-brainer for warranty coverage. Parkade leaks, unfortunately, we see them quite often, and they're certainly a warrantable item under your 5-year water penetration warranty. Sometimes confirming whether it's actual leak or previous water staining from the construction phase is a bit of a challenge. Generally speaking, these things are relatively easy to fix, but you know, something to keep your eye on if your building does have a below grade parking. The one on the left, that was actually a really significant leak, and you can see the water on the ground there, and it leaked almost 12 months of the year. That was a big fix that was done by the warranty provider. Here's an electrical issue. So one of the buildings we were involved in, we had mentioned we retain electrical consultants as part of the 15-month or the 24-month warranty review. And on this particular building, they found some fairly significant building code violations. What was found out was the electrician that was retained for this new construction project was somebody that had historically just done single-family homework, and maybe were a little bit out of their depth on knowledge on this larger strata building. And there was notable sort of building code issues that needed to be fixed. The technical safety branch got involved as part of this warranty repair. And this was a great catch by the electrical consultant that we brought on. The costs here to fix were quite significant, and thankfully it was done as part of the warranty policy. Window leaks. Window leaks are, you know, certainly ones that are bigger cost issues. This one's pretty obvious. You can see water staining. You can also see some corrosion occurring. These both are two relatively new buildings at the time when I took these photos. So, you know, there's one that a water penetration warranty likely would apply. So your 5-year. This is one that we just got recently involved with. Picture on the right, you'll notice it's a column, and you'll see the column's actually starting to sink or depress down. That stone veneer is not moving, and it's actually creating almost like a bucket with that flashing, further directing water. And that column there is located on the right side of that stack of balconies. And notice how good your eyes are, but you can notice that entire stack of balconies is listing. There's actually been differential settlement. This was kind of interesting. Here is this column after we took it apart. You can see some temporary shoring was installed. This was found at year 6. If that issue was just a water leak issue and it was causing damage, it actually wouldn't have been warrantable because it was after the 5-year warranty. The fact that this water leak caused failure to a load-bearing member, this was warrantable under the 10-year warranty. Very lucky that it was captured. We actually had a photo of this exact location at year 4, and there was no signs of deformation, and it was all concealed, and this was discovered at year 6. Thankfully, because it's that 10-year warranty, coverage was provided. I have seen very few structural warranty claims be successful. So again, you know, one of the reasons why we recommend getting on these things a bit earlier. That being said, this is a good example of sort of the cost that can be occurred if there is failure of a load-bearing component. And these can be this particular project, it's not a massive cost, but certainly one that's better from a strata standpoint, paid by the warranty provider. Common hallway, we got carpet coming apart. Here it's coming unglued from a stair riser, and the photo on the right, we've got it already becoming unraveling and threadbare. This was captured before the 15-month warranty, and that's a defect in labor and material. So that's arguably warrantable under the 15-month warranty, but would not be warrantable under your 2-year or 5-year or 10-year warranty. Here's a couple other examples of potential 15-month warranty items. I consider these things kind of like original construction defects. Hallway paint that wasn't corrected, receptacle cover, you know, minor items, easy enough to fix for a strata. That being said, if it's captured prior to the 15-month, might be something that can be dealt with by the warranty provider. Certainly can take questions on that at the end. I'll quickly push through here on the next topic. It sort of ties in a little bit, but this is more focused on older buildings that are looking at renewing whatever it may be, interior, exterior, mechanical systems, electrical, sort of some thoughts on how do you plan for those and some things to think about on execution. So how do you know if something might need to be renewed in the near future? Like, with strata building, it's a little harder. I find with single family homeowners are quite in tune with their building because, well, it's their house and they walk around all the time and they see everything. Strata building is a little different, and sometimes it's harder for people to kind of know where everything's at. You rely on your property manager, you rely on council, and you rely on your trades. Sometimes it's when something's broken, so it isn't working anymore, and that's a real reactive spot to be in. Sometimes not the greatest, especially if it's an elevator. Might have a lot of stairs to walk. So that's where things like proactive renewals, where strata may plan for renewal because the cost or the risk of it not working is just too much to consider. So again, things like hot water tanks and elevators are often replaced prior to failure. Sometimes owners want to improve something, change the way it operates, so it's not working the way they want. And this is a betterment. We see this fairly often as part of sort of regular renewals. They may change. So an example might be changing from a electric hot water tank to an on-demand system, or replacing light bulbs with LEDs, or whatever it happens to be. That's an improvement over what was originally there. And then there's cosmetic changes. So some groups, whether it's their common hallways, maybe they have common spaces like gyms, meeting rooms, or their lobby. Sometimes you'll see renewals are done because of more appearance change, and this is sometimes related to marketability of the home. And then there's my least favorite one, because our depreciation report says so. I know the Strata Property Act has got clauses in there for provide strata with some strength to get projects approved that are listed in their depreciation report, and that's great. That being said, recognize the depreciation report is a financial planning tool. It's not a condition assessment. So if the depreciation report says you should replace your roof at year 25 just because, sometimes it's prudent to go and look at it a bit closer. Maybe there's still years left in that asset, and so part of project planning is to look at those things as they come up in your depreciation report a little more critically, so that you can more accurately predict when it actually needs to be replaced versus when the depreciation report tells you that it needs to be replaced. And just jumping on my soapbox for a minute, I've written hundreds of depreciation reports. We don't offer the service. I actually am not a huge fan, and I actually think they're great from a financial planning tool. I wish they called it that, because last time I checked here in BC, not many properties are depreciating. So the whole connotation of depreciation really gives a negative spin on it. And I wish they really focus it more towards sort of project planning. But anyway, so depreciation report's a great tool, but as activities are coming up, starting to look at it, maybe an actual physical assessment can help strata streamline the accuracy of that. Things to consider once you're getting there is, what are the risks if the item fails? What's the current construction market? So, during the boom of pricing that we saw in the COVID market, we actually had some projects delay, or by choice, to wait for pricing. Pricing was just way too crazy. Strata finance is obviously come into play, and ideas of how much money is in the CRF, how big of a special levy may be tolerable to an ownership group. Scheduling, there's some projects that don't do great during certain times of the year. Ripping roofs off in the winter, not a big fan of. Painting in the winter can be challenging. Interior finishes can be done usually anytime, so schedule comes into play. What's the impact to your real estate? Not a real estate advisor, but I know that comes into play with some strata on their renewal funds. And then, the composition of the strata, just kind of where they're at with individually as their personal finances, and also their desire for the building. Sometimes we see with younger owners into the building, there may be a rejuvenation of the complex with respect to these people are looking for long-term, stay in there for long-term, and they want to update and improve things. And you know, maybe that's a little different as the demographic changes within the building. When you're looking at all these things, there's this sort of decision process of, do you maintain it or repair it, or do you renew? And, you know, how do you make that choice? So, you know, sometimes you have a activity coming up and you have sort of 4 options. You can do nothing, you can maintain or repair as needed, you can do a targeted renewal, or you can do a comprehensive renewal. And sort of the cost of these things sort of increases as we move down the list. Obviously, do nothing is the least cost, at least initially, but the risk associated with these options generally increases as you come from the bottom up. So when you do a comprehensive renewal, you've basically set everything back to 0. It's brand new, and so there's very little risk associated with failure or performance issues. And obviously, if you do nothing, the risk can be fairly significant. Here's a photo. This was from a building right across the street that I was working on. This is actually photos from the Times Colonist about 15, 16 years ago. This is on just down from the Beacon Hill, it's a little ice cream shop there at mile 0. One winter windstorm, you know, this is close to Dallas Road, and the guardrail blew off this balcony. Obviously, we'll call that deferred maintenance or deferred renewal. They did nothing for some time. This is actually a rental building. And by doing nothing, they obviously put themselves in a bit of a pickle here. We've got a life safety issue. We've also got quite a significant structural issue to deal with. So doing nothing actually resulted in a much more expensive renewal. This is this building today, what it looks like. And what you'll notice is the original balconies, they cantilevered out. Those structural members you can see sort of hanging, mounted on the underside of the balconies. Well, they were so water damaged that was not possible anymore. So they had to add columns. You can see at the corners of this new balcony. So quite a significant cost increase over if they had gotten on this balcony renewal activity a bit sooner, they probably could have kept the cantilever joists and saved themselves quite a bit of money. So that's an example of do nothing and you know, comprehensive balcony renewal, and one example there. Here's an example of a roof. This is actually a roof I'm working on right now, and here's an example of maintain and targeted and repair. So a lot of patches. We got patches on patches. There's I think 4 different colors of roof membrane I see here. And you know, I'm not saying anything negative about this. This can be a very successful path for this for a group, especially if you're trying to delay renewal. This complex has multiple roofs, and you know, maybe delaying one of the roofs to line it up with others so you can get better cost efficiencies makes a lot of sense. This roof finally had leakage into the suite below, and finding the leak was proven to be extremely difficult, as you can imagine. So this group underwent renewal, and I was on this job site this morning. It's been replaced, and we're in the dying throes of wrapping up that project. You know, unfortunately, it came a little earlier than what the strata had hoped, but they had already been planning for renewal, so they had funds set aside, which was good news. Here's an example of targeted renewal, where south side of the building here, or the right side of the page, if you would, that's all been renewed. And this red line that just showed up there, that's sort of a delineation between old and new. And this building had some renewal needs on balconies and windows on the south, which is fairly common that we see. This was up in Sydney area, and just the weather pattern up there. And they didn't have those conditions on the west, north, or east elevation. And so they underwent a targeted renewal, and that was their decision. You know, I do see this occasionally. There's often other reasons why target renewals don't work. It's not to do with with performance. It might be politics and funding and other sort of reasons, but certainly know that that decision between maintain, repair, targeted renewal, or comprehensive renewal, there's always the opportunity for the strata to consider that. And for these projects, how do we get there? Well, obviously with strata, you got to get consensus, and usually there's 5 or 6 things that need to be checked off for owners to all agree. And the needs need to be met. There needs to be a design that people approve. It needs to be on some sort of budget that everyone can afford. If there's any improvements owner wants, those are added if approved. The schedule needs to work, and then lastly, the owner will that approval, that vote process. So sometimes having a team that can help make sure all those boxes get checked is a prudent piece to help strata effectively get projects approved. I'll give you a few examples. So simple projects, well, they're simple. That's why they're called simple projects. And often you don't need any major budgeting. There's no owner voting or consultation that might be required. And typically funds are already set aside within the annual budget. So an example, a hot water tank needs to be replaced. Every 10 years, maybe there's some requirement or some plan every 10 years. So at year 9.5, the strata's already got money set aside. They call up their mechanical contractor, and it's a general like-for-like replacement. There's no design needed. That's a quick phone call, and away you go. Now I put here likely no outside help required. Notice I put question marks. Well, somebody in the team still needs to get the quote, approve the work. That might be a council member, maybe it's your property manager. So there are some tasks that still need to be taken care of. Those things are often, though, just dealt with sometimes through your annual maintenance budget or through a pre-approved resolution as part of a AGM. Bigger projects or more complicated projects they're complicated, and often options are needed to be considered. These options might have functionality issues, they might have appearance considerations, and certainly have cost implications. Somebody needs to define the criteria of what it is that we want to achieve with a project. Do we want better appearance? Do we need better performance? Is cost the driver? Defining those is really important. Owners often need to be consulted, and this is through town halls, resolutions that are drafted up for AGM or SGM, and making sure owners are aware what it is they're voting on. And the financial planning. So best case scenario that this complicated or larger or more complex project was noted years in advance, and financial planning may have already started with increases to your monthly CRF contributions, so that when this project finally comes to fruition, owners are in a position to easily handle that financial burden, whether it's through CRF payment or a combination of CRF and special levy. Obviously there's lots of options there. With these things too, there can be operational planning. So elevator is going to be out of service for a while, or maybe it's somebody's balcony, or it's hallway carpeting. These are impact people getting in and out of their suite. So having some plans there in place are often prudent for these larger complex or these larger projects, which is where your specialized expertise might be needed, or maybe just wanted, a good option to have. So, do you need a consultant on this renewal project that you're considering taking on? Well, if the municipality requires professional assurance, so you require a building permit, and that building permit requires a professional, whether it's an architect or an engineer, then yes, you're going to need a consultant. And certainly not every project requires a building permit, and not every building permit requires a professional. So, certainly talk to your municipality on those ones. Sometimes, regardless of whether a municipality requires a consultant, sometimes strata want a consultant for technical support, and that may be for other things like contractual reasons or operational sort of strategic reasons. And this is where sort of the line between consultant and project manager. So Do you need a project manager for your project? You know, is there someone on council or the property manager that's going to take the lead on getting quotes, reviewing the quotes, approving the quote, reviewing the work, approving the bills? Maybe it's prudent or beneficial to have an independent agent there to help with some of those things, and you know, where's the strata's risk and their liability control on projects where they don't have a project manager or outside support. So things like, again, like hot water tank, probably don't need a project manager as long as someone's willing to take it on. But if you're maybe doing a roof replacement, carpet renewal, interior painting, you know, there's lots of gray areas on some of these things. Larger projects like massive mechanical repiping or elevator renewals or exterior renewals. You know, this is where often it's required to have a consultant, and typically you have a project manager. Either that's the consultant as well, or you have a standalone project manager. So, you know, what does a project manager do for you, or a consultant? You know, they help define the problem and put together a boutique of solutions. They identify key things that need to be approved by the strata. You know, so the minutia they take care of, and they put in front of the strata the key questions that they need advice on or guidance on, and things that likely need to be voted on. Your project manager will take care of all those tasks that are approved within the mandate that you give them. Might be applying for a building permit, might be getting 3 quotes, reviewing the work, whatever it happens to be. And they really act as your agent with your best interests first, okay? I'll get into that after, but you know, best interest first, that's a real important piece. So if you're going to have a project manager or consultant, you want to have one that you have belief that they're putting your best interest first. And here's just a few tasks that project managers and consultants provide on large renewal projects, or maybe not large, complicated renewal projects. And there's others. One of the worst is when I get a phone call from a group that's started on their own, and they've got 3 quotes or 4 quotes, and there's this huge spread, and they call me up and they're looking for help. And then I ask them, I say, well, what did you ask the consult or the trades to bid? And there's no information, and it was just a site walk, so it can be real challenging. Here's an example real quick. I'm going to rip through these. Here's that roof that I was just talking about. That's wrapping up. We got a quote, and there was the quote, $70,000. I coughed when I saw that. It's way higher than what I'm expecting. We had put together some information. We reached back out to the contractor and said, that seems outrageous. They came back to us with $5,000 reduction. They found some efficiencies. I said, that's still outrageous. I came back again. We did some revisions with them, sort of brainstormed, made things a little simpler. They still get their 20-year manufacturer labor and material warranty, and we've taken $11,000 off the price of that roof just through some, you know, thoughtful discussions with them. Did that over a span of a couple days. That project moved forward. That's what one of the things a project manager or consultant can do for you as part of your cost control. So here's some examples I'll pull up of, you know, projects that maybe didn't have control. So we got color 1, color 2, color 3. They did 3 different sort of iterations of work here. None of the colors match. If you were to zoom out, it looks like a bit of a patchwork quilt on this project, and never mind that piece of flashing there, not exactly the most beautifully finished piece of work. And it's nothing against each individual trade. It's just how those 2 pieces marry together and the sequencing of that work. It wasn't really clearly thought out. Here's an example of a door that was installed on a project, and the material used was wrong. And I don't know who picked the material, but certainly they picked the wrong material. This is downtown. I drove by this, a few months ago, I guess. It was in the fall. You can see by the leaves. And if you can spot it, but there it is. Somebody getting a heat pump installed on a multi-unit building, and they've ran the heat pump lines through the rainwater leader. And questionable choice on routing. You know, who was in charge of that? You know, likely the owner just said, yes, go ahead. And they walked away. The contractor walked away when they were done. That's what I noticed right away when I drove by the building. Here's one large multi-unit building. We had specs, we had a general contractor, we had all these things. We're in the dying throes of this project. And I look at this, and it's a rainwater leader screwed to a building. It's brand new. It looks beautiful. And they've got 3 different types of screws. None of them are stainless. Just a fit and finish thing that I'm not happy with. You know, who's picking up those things? That's what your consultant or your project manager, you know, that's part of their job, is to review the work and make sure you're getting what you pay for. Last one, here's a strata that underwent a fairly significant renewal. They had data cabling running all on the outside of their building. Now you can see with these little chases here of metal shrouding. And even had, if you look real close, you can see wire hanging down from the cap flash, and they had stuffed telecom wire up there to try and route for cable TV and internet and stuff. As part of our design, we sorted out all new routing for that. We also, they don't have fiber optic in this neighborhood yet, but we ran fiber cable as part side by side with the coaxial cable, so that when it's ready, this building can just be plugged in and they don't have to worry about it. Here was the jungle of wiring that had to be dealt with by the contractor. We worked with them on a design to make this as part of the building envelope renewal project that was underway. We sorted out a few things like service upgrades, and then also we built in a ducting and shroud for future heat pump installation. This building couldn't afford a heat pump at the time on their units, but they certainly wanted to future-proof it so that they don't have to take apart this building in the future if they wanted to add in a heat pump on every suite. So that's what that went from to. This is what the photo on the right is. And those heavy black flashings you see at the floor lines and at the corners, you'll see one. Those are little chase holes that we have for all the data cabling and gas lines and such that allowed that to stay on the building. So simple projects, keep them simple as best you can, but just remember, make sure you give enough instructions so that things like don't run your heat pump lines through my rainwater leader. It seems fairly obvious, but maybe not to everybody. And then complicated projects, you know, hire the right people for project success. And, you know, who are the right people? So when I'm talking about contractors, project managers, consultants, you know, somebody you trust. You know, there needs to be transparency on their services and also all the things they're communicating. And they need to be technically competent in whatever it is that you're asking them to do, whether it's contracts, you know, interior finishing, roofing, whatever it is. Make sure you're hiring the right people, and therefore the greatest potential for project success. There we go.
Hi, I'm just checking in. There's Christy.
Awesome. Sorry,
Check.
technical Zoom issues here. Thank you so much, Matt. We do have at least one question here, so let's jump right into it. Susan has asked, does a heat pump take more electricity than a baseboard heater that it would be replacing?
That's a good question. So I'm going to say it depends. So if it's a smaller, let's say it's a one single head heat pump, so something you'd see more in, say, a traditional multi-unit, like a 4-story or 6-story strata building, highly likely, yes, that can be. It does depend, though. Certainly, if you get into heat pumps that might have multiple heads, there may not be the ability to run it off that baseboard power source. So we've seen it successful, and then we've also seen where they have to do upgrades. So certainly something that would have to be consulted with the electrician. I will say on that project I just showed where we future-proof the building by running conduit for heat pump lines. We also did an electrical review of that building and confirmed that they had sufficient space within the panels within the suite should they have to run additional power to the heat pump. Obviously, that would be a strata lot issue, but the infrastructure was in place.
Excellent. Thank you. We don't have any other questions, so I just want to give it a little bit of time. For those of you that are present, this is a great opportunity to put your question out there and see if Matt can answer it for you. otherwise we might get to leave a little bit early, finish up a little bit early.
That's strata topic combined with engineering, put everyone right to sleep. Blame them.
Give it one more minute or so if anyone has questions. Okay. Can you comment on the requirement to facilitate installation of EV chargers versus allowing enough electrical capacity for future-proof against Clean BC initiatives for fired gas equipment replacement?
Yeah, this is a really interesting challenge we have right now with older buildings. We're seeing actually one of Proline's projects that we work on down at Dockside Green, where we're seeing EV charging being added to a building, parking stalls. That alone is a challenge. Who gets it? Is it at every stall? And then, yeah, what happens in the future if there's other things that need to be replaced? I'm going to give a real horrific example on a whole neighborhood side of things, but the city of Kelowna or portions of the city of Kelowna are they're actually out of power. They're actually don't have the capacity for new construction, combined with things like EV chargers that are being added after the fact and lot development that are going from 1 to 4 units. They're just tapped out of power. And so I don't know if BC, I'm going to say like the Clean BC initiatives, I don't know if they fully thought that out. I think they've more or less rolled out these incentives and then just sort of hope for the best that BC Hydro and Fortis will be able to keep up. But certainly from a strata standpoint, you have 2 issues. You have one, how much power is coming to the building, and do you need to upgrade that? And then how much power is coming to a suite? Do you need to upgrade that for things like hot water tanks, EV charging and heat pumps? They're all good questions. So ultimately, this is where these electrical planning reports that are now mandatory are coming into play for strata.
Great, thank you. Anything else out there percolating? I'll add a question to the tail end of that. If strata councils are uncomfortable with the electrical planning reports that they've received in terms of kind of interpreting the information that's presented, is that something that you guys can assist with?
To a certain extent, certainly around infrastructure, like overarching or infrastructure that's associated with it. So, sort of the over, let's say there's always other things instead of just the electrical piece. There's ducting and bulkheads and stuff. And we can look at sort of project logistics on that. As far as the nuts and bolts of how much power is needed, obviously that's out of our area of expertise. But as far as project concept planning, absolutely, we provide that. So, on that front, one of the things I do, as I mentioned, we work with strata almost exclusively, 99% plus. I do offer to meet with strata councils at council meetings and stuff when they've got a potential project or potential need. I'm happy to come by and talk to see if it is something that we think we can provide assistance with, if there's value we think there is, or, in the same breath, we can point them in a direction of who we think would be a good resource for them. There's no cost for that. We're happy to come by, and in same breath, we're happy to host people at our office if they want to bring these questions where they're just not even sure who to talk to. That is one of our strengths in the marketplace, is we work with so many trades. We are a quote unquote problem solver that often we may not have the in-house tools, but we can point you in the direction of where to go get the information you need.
Excellent. No other questions. So any closing comments before I pass it over to Catherine to wrap things up? All right.
Yep. All right.
Sounds like that's it, Catherine.
Sounds like it. All right. Thanks so much, Matt and Christy, and thanks to everybody who attended today. As I mentioned at the beginning, we did record the session, and we will be sending out a link to the recording in the coming weeks. So you can feel free to share that link with other council members or other people who you think would be interested or benefit from the information that was shared here. We'll also be posting the recording to our YouTube channel, so you can find it and any past sessions there. And there's a lot of information on there. Feel free to take a look. YouTube Proline Management. As mentioned, if you have any questions or comments, you can complete the survey at the end of the session, or feel free to reach out to me directly. And thank you again for joining us. Have a wonderful rest of your sunny September, got the month right, afternoon.